The council chamber fell silent when High Regent Velaran spoke the words that no Thessari had ever dared to say. "We must contact Earth." The other council members looked at him with wide eyes. Their thin bodies trembled. Their pale blue skin turned almost white with fear. For 300 years, the Thessari collective had avoided the small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy. Every species knew about Earth. Every species feared it. "You cannot be serious," said Minister Drath. His voice shook. "The humans are Deathworlders. They come from a planet that tries to kill them every single day. They have survived ice ages. They have survived plagues that killed millions. They have survived wars against each other that lasted for generations. They are monsters." Valoran closed his 4 eyes and took a deep breath. Outside the tall windows of the council chamber, the sky burned orange. Voraxian warships filled the horizon. They had been bombing the capital city for 6 days now. Half the buildings were already ruins. Millions of Thessari had fled to underground shelters. Millions more were already dead. "The Voraxians will kill us all," Velaran said. "Our fleet is destroyed. Our armies are broken. We sent messages to every species in the Galactic Council. The Rithani said they were too far away. The Mulak said they could not spare any ships. The Fenari simply did not reply. No one is coming to save us." "Then we die with dignity," said Minister Keth. "We do not invite monsters into our home." Elder Sinith stood up slowly. She was the oldest Thessari in the room. She had lived for over 400 years. She had studied humans longer than anyone else. She had watched their broadcasts. She had read their history. She had tried to understand these strange creatures from the death world. "I have spent my life studying humans," Sinith said. "Yes. They are violent. Yes. Their planet is a nightmare of predators and diseases and natural disasters. But I have seen something else in them, something that the rest of the galaxy does not understand." "What could you possibly see in those creatures?" Drath asked. "They protect the weak," Sinith said. "They fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. They run toward danger instead of away from it. They call it courage. They call it duty. They call it being human." The council members looked at each other. They did not believe her. How could beings so violent also be protectors? The building shook. Another bomb had landed somewhere close. Dust fell from the ceiling. Through the window, they could see Voraxian landing craft coming down in the eastern district. Soon the enemy soldiers would be in the streets. Soon they would be at the doors of the council chamber. "Send the message," Valoran said. "May the stars forgive us for what we are about to do." The signal left Thessari Prime at the speed of light. It traveled through relay stations that the Thessari had built over centuries. It passed through empty space, where no ships flew. It reached the edge of human territory in less than 1 day. On Earth, in a deep underground facility called Central Command, a young officer named Lieutenant Amy Lawson was the first to see it. "Sir," she said to her commanding officer, "we have received a distress signal. It is coming from the Thessari Collective. They are asking for military help." Commander Daniel Shaw walked over to her station. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had fought in 3 interstellar campaigns. He had seen things that would give most people nightmares. But he had never expected this. "The Thessari?" he said. "They have refused to talk to us for 300 years. They called us dangerous animals. They said we should never be allowed to leave our solar system." "Yes, sir," Lawson said. "But they are dying. The Voraxian Empire has invaded their space. Their fleet is gone. Their armies are defeated. They say they will be completely destroyed within 2 weeks." Shaw read the message on the screen. It was written in simple galactic standard. The words were desperate. Whoever had written this message had put aside all pride, all fear, all prejudice. They were begging for help from the monsters they had feared for so long. "Get me Admiral Price," Shaw said, "and start preparing the fleet." Within 6 hours, the human response was organized. 12 warships would make the journey to Thessari space. It was not a large fleet by human standards, but it was all they could send on short notice. Shaw stood on the bridge of the flagship Ironclad. Around him, His crew worked at their stations. They were men and women who had trained for years. They had fought pirates. They had explored dead worlds. They had faced dangers that would make other species run away screaming. "All ships report ready," said Captain Tony Reeves. He was the pilot of the Ironclad, a man with steady hands and calm nerves. "Then let us go save some aliens," Shaw said. The fleet jumped into faster-than-light travel. The stars stretched into long lines of light. The ships disappeared from Earth space. Across the galaxy, observation posts belonging to dozens of different species detected the movement. They sent messages to their governments. They sent warnings to their military commanders. They spread the news with a mixture of fear and wonder. The Deathworlders were coming. On a Fenari station near the border, a communications officer watched his screen with wide eyes. "They actually responded," he whispered. "The humans are actually going to help." "The Thessari have made a terrible mistake," his commander said. "They have called for help from the one species that everyone fears. Even if the humans save them from the Voraxians, who will save them from the humans?" The message spread from station to station, from planet to planet, from species to species. Some felt relief. Others felt terror. Most felt both at the same time. The humans were coming. The Deathworlders were on the move. And the galaxy would never be the same. On the Ironclad, Sergeant Kevin Brooks checked his weapons for the 5th time. He was the leader of the ground forces. His job was simple: land on the planet, kill the enemy, protect the civilians. He had done it many times before. "Do you think the Thessari will be grateful?" asked one of his soldiers. "They will be terrified," Brooks said. "They have heard stories about us their whole lives. They think we are monsters, wild animals, killing machines. And are we?" Brooks smiled. It was not a kind smile. "We are whatever we need to be. Right now, those aliens need soldiers. They need fighters. They need people who are not afraid to die. Lucky for them, that is exactly what we are." Dr. Linda Carter sat in her small office on the ship, reading everything she could find about the Thessari. She was the xenobiologist and cultural expert. Her job was to help humans and aliens understand each other. It would not be easy. The Thessari had evolved on a paradise world with no predators, no natural disasters, and no real challenges. They had never needed to fight for survival. They could not understand creatures like humans. "This is going to be interesting," she said to herself. The fleet flew on through the darkness between stars. 12 ships, 3,000 humans, all of them heading toward a war that was not their own, to save a species that feared them more than death itself. Because that was what humans did. They answered calls for help. They fought for strangers. They ran toward danger. The Deathworlders were coming. And they were bringing the wrath of 1,000 wars with them. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Thessari space. Commander Daniel Shaw stood on the bridge of the Ironclad and looked at the view screen. What he saw made his jaw tighten. Debris floated everywhere. Broken ships. Destroyed stations. Bodies frozen in the cold vacuum of space. The Thessari fleet had been completely destroyed. Hundreds of ships had been turned into twisted metal. Thousands of Thessari had died here, trying to defend their home. "The Voraxians did not take prisoners," Lieutenant Amy Lawson said quietly. "No," Shaw said. "They did not." The fleet moved forward carefully. They passed through the field of debris. Every human on every ship saw the destruction. Every human understood what kind of enemy they were facing. On Thessari Prime, the arrival of the human fleet caused panic. High Regent Valoran had announced that help was coming. He had tried to prepare his people. But nothing could prepare the Thessari for the sight of human beings. The first shuttle landed in the central plaza of the capital city. The ramp lowered. Commander Shaw stepped out first. Behind him came Lieutenant Lawson, Dr. Linda Carter, and a squad of soldiers. The Thessari who had gathered to meet them stepped back. Some of them ran away. Others fell to their knees, shaking with fear. Shaw stopped walking. He looked at the terrified aliens. They were thin and fragile. Their skin was pale blue. Their eyes were large and dark. They looked like they might break if someone touched them too hard. "We are here to help," Shaw said. His voice was calm and steady. "We received your message. We came as fast as we could." Elder Sineth walked forward. She was the only Thesari who did not seem completely terrified. Her steps were slow but sure. She stopped in front of Shaw and looked up at him. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I know what it cost you to answer our call." "It cost us nothing," Shaw said. "This is what we do." Sineth smiled sadly. "You do not understand. I mean what it cost you to come help a species that has called you monsters for 300 years. We said terrible things about your kind. We refused to speak with you. We treated you like dangerous animals, and still you came." Shaw was silent for a moment. Then he nodded. "We heard all those things. We know what the galaxy thinks of us. But you asked for help. That is all that matters." Dr. Carter stepped forward. She had spent the entire journey studying Thesari biology and culture. She knew that these beings had evolved on a world with no predators, no harsh weather, and no real danger. They had never needed to fight. They had never needed to be strong. They were peaceful creatures who had lived in peace for thousands of years. And now they were looking at humans as if humans were death itself. "My name is Linda Carter," she said gently. "I am here to help us understand each other. I know we must seem strange and frightening to you. But I promise, we are not here to hurt anyone. We are here to fight the Varaxians." A young Thesari child peeked out from behind her mother. The child had large eyes and trembling hands. She looked at the human soldiers with their weapons and armor. "Are they going to eat us?" the child asked in a small voice. Carter knelt down so she was at the child's level. "No, little one. We do not eat people. We eat food. Just like you. We have families. Just like you. We are different on the outside, but inside, we are not so different." The child stared at her for a long moment. Then she reached out and touched Carter's hand. The mother gasped and pulled the child back. "It is warm," the child said with wonder. "Her skin is warm." The tension in the plaza changed slightly. The Thesari were still afraid. But they were also curious. These Deathworlders did not act like monsters. They spoke softly. They moved slowly. They did not bare their teeth or raise their weapons. High Regent Valoran arrived with his guards. He walked toward Shaw with careful steps. His face showed the stress of weeks of war and death. "Commander Shaw," he said, "I am Valoran. I sent the message to your world. I must be honest with you. Many of my people are more afraid of you than they are of the Varaxians." "I understand," Shaw said. "We know our reputation. We know the stories that are told about us. But right now, you have a bigger problem than us. Tell me about the Varaxian forces." Valoran led Shaw and his team to the command center beneath the Capitol building. Maps and screens showed the situation across Thesari space. It was not good. The Varaxians controlled most of the outer colonies. Their main fleet was gathering for a final attack on Thesari Prime. They would arrive in 3 days. "Warlord Kreeth leads their forces," Valoran said. "He is known throughout the galaxy as a brutal conqueror. He has destroyed entire species. He shows no mercy. He takes no prisoners." Shaw studied the maps. He looked at the enemy positions. He counted their ships. He calculated their strength. "Kreeth has never fought humans before," Shaw said. "That is true," Valoran said. "He believes you are no threat. His scouts reported that your fleet is small. He laughed when he heard you were coming." "Good," Shaw said. "Let him laugh." Lieutenant Lawson set up communication equipment. She would be the bridge between human forces and Thesari survivors. She began talking to local leaders, gathering information, building connections. Meanwhile, Sergeant Brooks took his soldiers out into the ruined city. They needed to see the ground. They needed to understand where the enemy would attack and where they could set up defenses. The Thesari watched the human soldiers with wide eyes. They had never seen beings who moved so fast. They had never seen beings who seemed so comfortable with weapons. Every step the humans took was confident and sure. Every movement was efficient and purposeful. They walk like predators, one Thessari said to another. They walk like hunters. That is because they are hunters, the other replied. Their world made them this way. They had to hunt. To survive. They had to fight every day of their evolution. On his warship in the outer system, Warlord Kreeth received reports about the human fleet. He sat on his command chair and listened to his officers describe the strange new enemy. They are small in number, one officer said. Only 12 ships, perhaps 3,000 soldiers. And their ships? Kreeth asked. Primitive compared to ours. Slower, less shielded. Their weapons are strong but nothing we cannot handle. Kreeth smiled. His face was covered in scars from many battles. His body was thick and powerful. He had conquered dozens of worlds. He had killed millions of beings. The galaxy feared his name. The Thessari called for help from Deathworlders, he said. They must be truly desperate. But it will not matter. These humans are few. We are many. We will crush them and add their skulls to our collection. His officers laughed. They had no reason to fear. They had never lost a war. They had never faced an enemy they could not destroy. Back on Thessari Prime, Elder Sinith found Commander Shaw standing alone on a balcony. He was looking up at the stars. His face was calm, but his eyes were thinking. What do you see? Sinith asked. I see a war that can be won, Shaw said. The Voraxians are strong, but they are arrogant. They have won too many easy battles. They do not know what it means to fight an enemy that refuses to die. And you believe humans are such an enemy? Shaw turned to look at her. His eyes were hard and old and full of memories. My species has spent its entire existence fighting to survive, he said. We have fought predators. We have fought diseases. We have fought our own planet. And most of all, we have fought each other. We have 1,000 wars in our history, 1,000 wars worth of pain and blood and death. We learned from every single one of them. All Razor. That sounds terrible, Sinith said. It was, Shaw agreed. But it made us who we are. When the Voraxians come, they will learn what it means to fight Deathworlders. They will learn why the galaxy is afraid of us, and they will wish they had never touched the beings under our protection. Sinith looked at this human commander. She saw violence in him, but she also saw something else. She saw purpose. She saw determination. She saw a being who would burn himself to ashes to protect innocent lives. I believe I was right about your kind, she said quietly. And what did you believe? That you are not just monsters. You are guardians. The most dangerous guardians the galaxy has ever seen. Shaw said nothing. He just turned back to the stars and waited for the war to begin. The Voraxian vanguard arrived one day earlier than expected. 20 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel above a Thessari colony called Haven. It was a small moon with a population of 50,000. The people there were refugees from other worlds that had already fallen. Commander Shaw received the news while he was still organizing defenses on Thessari Prime. They are attacking Haven, Lieutenant Lawson reported. The colony has no military ships, no weapons, just civilians. Shaw did not hesitate. All ships move to intercept. Now. High Regent Valoran grabbed Shaw's arm. Wait. You cannot leave Thessari Prime undefended. The main Voraxian fleet will be here in 2 days. You need to stay and protect us. Shaw looked at the alien leader. His eyes were cold and hard. There are 50,000 innocent people on Haven, Shaw said. Children. Families. People who have already lost everything. I will not let them die while I sit here waiting. But the strategy. I do not leave civilians to die. Ever. That is not how humans fight. The human fleet turned and flew toward Haven at maximum speed. The ironclad led the way. Behind it came 11 other warships. They were smaller than the Voraxian ships. They were slower, but they were coming anyway. On Haven, the people saw the Voraxian ships in the sky and screamed. They ran for shelters. They held their children. They prayed to whatever gods they believed in. They knew what the Voraxians did to conquered worlds. There would be no mercy. There would be no survivors. The first bombs began to fall. Then the human fleet arrived. Captain Tony Reeves pushed the ironclad to its limits. The ship shook as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel right in the middle of the Voraxian formation. It was a crazy move. It was dangerous. Any other species would never attempt it. All weapons fire, Shaw commanded. The ironclad opened up with everything it had. Missiles flew in every direction. Energy cannons blazed with white fire. The ship spun and twisted between enemy vessels, hitting them from angles they did not expect. The Voraxians were surprised. They had been told the humans would be cautious. They had been told humans would protect their ships. Instead, the human vessels flew directly into combat like they did not care if they were destroyed. "They are insane," a Voraxian captain said. "They are flying directly into our weapons range." The battle was chaos. Human ships took hits that would cripple vessels of any other species. Armor was torn open. Systems were damaged. Fires burned inside the corridors. But the ships kept fighting. Human crews ran to damage control stations. They put out fires with their bare hands. They sealed breaches while the air was being sucked out into space. They refused to stop. On the ironclad, Shaw stood on the bridge as the ship shook from enemy fire. "Hull breach on Deck 7, an officer reported. "Seal it and keep firing," Shaw said. "We have lost forward shields. Reroute power from non-essential systems. Keep firing." "Sir, we are taking heavy damage." Shaw looked at the officer. "I know. But those people down there are dying. We do not stop until they are safe." The Voraxian commanders could not understand what they were seeing. The human ships were damaged. They were burning. They should have retreated. Any sensible enemy would pull back and regroup, but the humans did not retreat. They pushed forward. They fought harder. They seemed to become more dangerous as the battle went on, not less. On the surface of Haven, Sergeant Kevin Brooks led his soldiers out of their landing craft. The ground was burning. Buildings were falling. Voraxian soldiers were everywhere. "Move out," Brooks ordered. "Protect the civilians." The human soldiers ran into the chaos. They found Thesari families hiding in destroyed buildings. They carried wounded aliens to safety. They stood between the helpless and the enemy. A Voraxian squad turned a corner and found Brooks waiting for them. The alien soldiers were large and strong. Their armor was thick. Their weapons were powerful. Brooks smiled. "You picked the wrong planet," he said. The fight was short. Human reflexes were faster. Human instincts were sharper. Human bodies were tougher. The Voraxians had evolved on an easy world with plenty of food and no real predators. They were strong, but they had never needed to be survivors. Humans were born survivors. Brooks put down the last Voraxian soldier and looked around. More were coming. He could hear them in the distance. He checked his weapon and prepared to fight again. "How many?" one of his soldiers asked. "Does it matter?" Brooks replied. "We stay until the civilians are safe. Then we stay some more." In space, the battle turned. The human ships were damaged, but they were winning. 3 Voraxian warships had been destroyed. 4 more were badly hurt. The remaining enemy vessels were pulling back. The Voraxian commander sent a message to Warlord Kreth. "The humans are not retreating. We have hit them with everything we have. They keep fighting. They are taking damage that should destroy them. But they keep fighting." Kreth received the message with disbelief. "Impossible. No species fights like that. No species ignores damage like that. They must be weakening." "They are not weakening, sir. They are getting stronger. Every time we hurt them, they seem to fight harder." On the surface of Haven, the evacuation was beginning. Human soldiers guided Thesari civilians to transport ships. Dr. Linda Carter was there, helping wounded aliens, carrying children, speaking soft words of comfort. A young Thesari mother grabbed Carter's hand. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Why are you risking your lives for us? We are strangers. We called your kind monsters." Carter looked at her with kind eyes. "Because you needed help. That is reason enough. The Voraxian forces on the ground were destroyed. The enemy ships in space had fled. The human fleet had won the battle. But they had paid a price. 2 human ships were badly damaged. Dozens of sailors were injured. Several were dead. Shaw stood on the bridge of the ironclad and looked at the damage reports. His ship was hurt. His people were hurt. But they had saved 50,000 lives. Sir, Lawson said, the Thessari are sending messages from all over their space. They saw what we did. They saw us rush to defend Haven without hesitation. They are calling us heroes. Shaw shook his head. We are not heroes. We are soldiers. This is our job. It is more than that to them, sir. No one has ever fought for the Thessari like this. No one has ever risked so much to save them. On Thessari Prime, High Regent Valoran watched the recordings of the battle. He saw human ships taking terrible damage and refusing to retreat. He saw human soldiers running into fire to save alien children. He saw beings from a death world putting their lives between innocent people and destruction. I was wrong about them, he said quietly. We were all wrong about them. Elder Sineth stood beside him. They are exactly what I told you they were. Violent. Yes. Dangerous. Yes. But also protective. Also brave. Also willing to die for strangers. How can beings so deadly also be so good? Because they choose to be, Sineth said. Their world made them capable of terrible violence. But they choose how to use that violence. They choose to protect. They choose to defend. They choose to be guardians instead of monsters. In the medical bay of the ironclad, Brooks sat with one of his wounded soldiers. The young man had been shot while carrying a Thessari child to safety. He had kept running even with the wound. He had not dropped the child. You did good today, Brooks said. The soldier smiled weakly. Just doing what humans do, Sergeant. And what is that? Fighting for people who cannot fight for themselves. Brooks nodded. Outside the medical bay, the ship flew back toward Thessari Prime. The main Voraxian fleet would arrive soon. The real battle was still coming. But the humans were ready. They had been ready for 1,000 wars. They would be ready for this one too. Warlord Kreeth brought his entire fleet to Thessari Prime. 80 warships filled the sky. Landing craft carried 100,000 soldiers. This was the largest invasion force the Voraxian Empire had assembled in 50 years. Kreeth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Destroyer of Worlds. He looked at the planet below with hungry eyes. The Thessari were weak. They were pathetic. They would fall like all the others had fallen. The only problem was the humans. Kreeth had received reports from the battle at Haven. He had seen recordings of human ships refusing to retreat. He had heard descriptions of human soldiers fighting in conditions that should have killed them. He did not believe the reports at first. He thought his officers were making excuses, but now he would see for himself. Send a message to the human commander, Kreeth ordered. Tell him he has one chance to withdraw. If he leaves now, I will let his fleet go. If he stays, I will destroy every human ship and take his head as a trophy. The message reached the ironclad within minutes. Commander Shaw read it while standing on the bridge. His officers watched him carefully. They knew they were outnumbered. They knew the odds were against them. Shaw began to laugh. Sir? Lieutenant Lawson asked. He wants us to leave, Shaw said. He thinks we will run away because his fleet is bigger than ours. What should we tell him? Shaw thought for a moment. Then he smiled. Tell him this. Humans do not run. We have never run. Come and find out why the galaxy fears us. The message went back to Kreeth. The warlord read it with anger. No one spoke to him like this. No one challenged him. He had destroyed entire civilizations for lesser insults. Kill them all, he ordered. Leave nothing alive. The Voraxian fleet advanced. 80 warships moved toward the human position. Their weapons charged. Their shields activated. They were confident. They were certain of victory. Shaw watched them come. He had studied Voraxian tactics for days. He understood how they fought. They relied on overwhelming force. They pushed forward in massive formations. They crushed their enemies with numbers. It was predictable. It was arrogant. It was exactly what Shaw had expected. "Begin the Shaw maneuver," he ordered. The human ships did not form a defensive line. Instead, they scattered. They flew in different directions, breaking into small groups. They dove toward the planet and used its gravity to change their speeds. They hid behind moons and asteroids. They became impossible to track. "What are they doing?" a Voraxian officer asked. "I do not know," his commander replied. "This makes no sense." Quote, "But it made perfect sense." Human military history was full of battles where smaller forces defeated larger ones. Shaw knew every tactic. He knew how to use terrain. He knew how to use speed. He knew how to make the enemy fight on his terms instead of their own. The first group of Voraxian ships chased the ironclad behind a moon. When they came around the other side, 3 human ships were waiting. The Voraxians flew directly into a trap. 2 of their warships exploded before they could react. On the other side of the battle, Captain Reeves led his ship into the middle of the Voraxian formation. He spun the vessel in ways that should have been impossible. He used his smaller size to get inside the enemy shields. He fired at close range where Voraxian armor was weakest. "They are inside our lines," a Voraxian captain screamed into his communicator. "They are everywhere. I cannot track them." "Then fire everywhere," Kreth roared. "Destroy them." The Voraxians began firing in all directions. They hit some human ships, but they also hit each other. The humans were moving so fast and so unpredictably that the enemy could not aim properly. Shaw had learned this tactic from ancient human history. Small forces had defeated larger ones many times. The Greeks at Thermopylae, the Americans at Trenton, the Vietnamese against multiple superpowers. Humans understood that numbers were not everything. Strategy, surprise, and willpower could defeat any enemy. On the surface of Thesari Prime, Sergeant Brooks prepared his ground forces. The Voraxian landing craft were coming down. Thousands of enemy soldiers would soon be in the streets. But Brooks had been preparing for days. He had studied the city. He had found the best defensive positions. He had set traps in buildings and tunnels. He had turned the capital into a nightmare for any invading force. "Remember your training," Brooks told his soldiers. "We fight smart. We fight hard. We do not stop until every enemy is down." The first Voraxian soldiers landed. They marched into the city, expecting weak resistance. They found something very different. Human soldiers hit them from every direction. From rooftops. From windows. From underground passages. The Voraxians could not see where the attacks were coming from. They fired wildly and hit nothing. One Voraxian squad entered a building to clear it. Brooks was waiting inside. He moved through the dark rooms like a ghost. The Voraxian soldiers never saw him until it was too late. "What are these creatures?" One of the last Voraxian soldiers gasped before Brooks finished him. "We are humans," Brooks said, "and you should not have come here." In space, the battle continued. The human ships were taking damage. Several had lost engines. Several had fires burning inside them. But they kept fighting. They refused to stop. Kreth watched with growing anger. His fleet was winning. He was destroying human ships one by one. But it was taking too long. Too many of his own ships were also being destroyed. "Why will they not die?" he screamed. "Why do they keep fighting?" One of his officers checked the data. "Their ships are designed to keep working even when badly damaged. Their crews are trained to repair systems while under fire. They have redundant everything. It is like they built their ships expecting to be nearly destroyed. That is insane. That is human." Shaw stood on the bridge of the ironclad. The ship was badly damaged. Fire suppression systems had failed on 3 decks. The main engine was operating at half power. A quarter of the crew was wounded, but they were still fighting. "Sir, we cannot take much more of this," an officer said. "Yes, we can," Shaw replied. "Humans can always take more. That is what makes us human." He looked at the battle map. The Voraxian fleet was in chaos. His tactics had worked. The enemy formation was broken. Their ships were scattered and confused. Now, Shaw said, all ships converge on the flagship. Everything we have. The human ships turned and flew toward the destroyer of worlds. They came from every direction at once. They launched every missile they had left. They fired every weapon until the barrels melted. Kreth saw them coming. For the first time in his long career, he felt something he had never felt before. Fear. Full shields, he ordered. All weapons fire. But it was too late. The human ships were too close, too fast, too determined. On Thesari Prime, the Thesari watched the battle on their screens. They saw human ships flying directly at the enemy flagship. They saw explosions everywhere. They saw humans doing something that no species in the galaxy would ever do. They were winning. High Regent Velarin turned to Elder Sinith. His eyes were wet with tears. They are dying for us, he said. They are destroying themselves to save us. No, Sinith said. They are fighting to save us. There is a difference. Humans do not throw their lives away. They fight with everything they have, and then they fight some more. The destroyer of worlds was burning. Kreth's flagship had been hit dozens of times. Fires were spreading through every deck. Escape pods were launching. The great warlord who had conquered so many worlds was running for his life. Shaw watched the enemy flagship die. He felt no joy. He felt no triumph. He just felt tired. Status report, he said. 7 of our ships are still combat capable, Lawson reported. The Voraxian fleet is retreating. We have won. Won. Such a simple word for so much pain. Shaw looked at the damage reports. So many wounded. So many dead. But they had saved the Thesari. They had stopped the invasion. Send a message to the remaining Voraxian ships, Shaw ordered. Tell them they have 2 choices. Surrender or die. There is no third option. The Voraxian fleet surrendered. On Thesari Prime, the cheering began. The people who had feared humans more than death itself were now crying with relief. The Deathworlders had saved them. The monsters had become their heroes. The wrath of 1,000 wars had protected the innocent, and the galaxy would never forget. The war was over. Voraxian soldiers laid down their weapons across Thesari space. Their ships powered down their engines. Their commanders sent messages of surrender to every human vessel. Warlord Kreth was captured alive. His escape pod had been intercepted by a human patrol ship. The great conqueror who had destroyed entire civilizations was now a prisoner. He was brought to the ironclad in chains. Commander Shaw met him in the holding area. Kreth was large and powerful, but his eyes showed something they had never shown before. Defeat. You have won, Kreth said. His voice was hollow. So kill me. Take your revenge. That is what conquerors do. Shaw looked at the alien warlord. He could see the scars of many battles on that face. He could see the pride that had been broken. He could see a being who expected death because death was all he had ever given to others. No, Shaw said. Kreth looked up with confusion. No, we are not going to kill you. You will stand trial for your crimes. You will answer for the species you destroyed and the innocent people you murdered. But we will not execute you. That is not our way. I do not understand. You defeated me. I am your enemy. In war, the victor kills the defeated. That is the law of the galaxy. Shaw shook his head. That might be the law of the galaxy, but it is not the law of humanity. We do not kill prisoners. We do not take revenge on those who have surrendered. We have done terrible things in our history, but we have also learned from them. Mercy is not weakness. Justice is not cruelty. Kreth stared at the human commander. In all his years of war, he had never met anyone like this. He had expected rage. He had expected torture. He had expected death. Instead, he received something far more shocking. He received fairness. You are strange creatures, Kreth said quietly. Yes, Shaw agreed. We are. On Thessarai Prime, the celebrations continued for days. The Thessarai people danced in the streets. They sang songs they had never sung before. They cried tears of joy and relief. The humans walked among them. At first, the Thessaris still kept their distance. Old fears did not die easily. But slowly, things began to change. A human soldier helped repair a damaged building. A human doctor treated wounded Thessari in a hospital. A human engineer worked with Thessari scientists to restore power to damaged areas. The Deathworlders were not just warriors. They were builders. They were healers. They were helpers. Dr. Linda Carter spent her days talking to Thessari families. She listened to their stories. She answered their questions about Earth and humanity. She helped them understand that humans were not the monsters they had feared. "Why did you come?" a young Thessari asked her. "You did not know us. You had no reason to help us." Carter smiled gently. "We came because you asked for help. Because you were in danger. Because innocent people were dying. But we called you monsters. We said terrible things about your kind. Words can be changed. Actions matter more. When you needed us, we came. That is what matters." High Regent Valoran called a meeting of the Galactic Council. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to witness something that had never happened before. A formal alliance between the Thessari collective and the human race. Valoran stood before the assembly. His voice was clear and strong. 300 years ago, our ancestors looked at Earth and saw only danger. They saw a planet of death and violence. They saw creatures who killed each other and everything around them. They decided to fear humanity. They decided to avoid humanity. They decided to treat humanity as monsters. He paused and looked around the chamber. They were wrong, the assembly murmured. Some of the representatives nodded. Others still looked uncertain. Old prejudices were hard to release. Humanity came to save us when no one else would. Valoran continued. They bled for us. They died for us. They fought against impossible odds because we asked them to. They showed us that the most dangerous beings in the galaxy can also be the most protective. Commander Shaw stood beside Valoran. He looked tired. The battle had cost him much. But there was peace in his eyes. "We do not ask the galaxy to love us," Shaw said. "We do not ask for forgiveness for the things our ancestors did. We only ask for a chance to show who we really are. We are dangerous, yes. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day, but we chose to use our strength to protect others. We chose to be guardians instead of conquerors." Elder Sineth stepped forward. She had watched humans longer than anyone else. She understood them better than any other alien. "The Deathworlders have earned our trust," she said. "They have earned our respect." Today, the Thessari Collective declares humanity to be friends and allies. Let the galaxy remember this day. Let them remember that when darkness came, the Deathworlders brought light. The assembly voted. The alliance was approved. For the first time in history, a galactic species had formally recognized humanity as something other than a threat. Later that night, Shaw found himself on the same balcony where he had spoken with Sineth days before. The old Thessari joined him once again. "It is done," she said. "The war is over. The alliance is signed. You have changed the galaxy forever." "We did not change anything," Shaw said. "We just showed people who we really are." "And who are you really?" Shaw thought about the question. He thought about human history. All the wars, all the suffering, all the cruelty and violence, but also all the heroism, all the sacrifice, all the times humans had stood up for what was right, even when it cost them everything. "We are survivors," he said. "Our planet tried to kill us, and we survived. We tried to kill each other, and we survived. We faced every horror that nature and our own hearts could create, and we survived. And somewhere along the way, we learned something important." "What did you learn?" "That survival means nothing if you are alone. That strength means nothing if you do not use it to help others. That the most important thing a being can do is stand between the weak and the strong, between the innocent and the guilty, between life and death." Sinith nodded slowly. That is a beautiful thing to learn. It took us a long time. We made many mistakes. We still make mistakes. But we keep trying. We keep fighting. We keep protecting. Because that is what it means to be human. The human fleet prepared to leave the next day. The ironclad and the other surviving ships were repaired enough to make the journey home. The wounded were stable. The dead had been honored. Thousands of Thesari came to watch the departure. They lined the streets of the capital. They stood on rooftops. They filled every space where they could see the sky. Shaw walked through the crowd toward his shuttle. Thesari reached out to touch him. They called his name. They thanked him with tears in their eyes. A small Thesari child ran up to him. It was the same child who had asked if humans would eat her. She held a small flower in her hands. For you, she said. Thank you for saving us. Shaw knelt down and took the flower. He looked at the child's large eyes and remembered why he had come. Not for glory. Not for honor. Not for politics or strategy. For people like her. Take care of yourself, he said gently, and take care of your world. Will you come back? The child asked. Shaw smiled. If you ever need us, just call. Humans always answer. The fleet departed. The ships rose into the sky and disappeared into the darkness between stars. The Thesari watched them go with a mixture of sadness and hope. Across the galaxy, other species watched as well. They had seen what humans could do. They had seen the wrath of 1,000 wars turned against those who threatened the innocent. Some species felt relief. Now they knew that humanity could be trusted. Some species felt fear. Now they knew that humanity should never be crossed. But all of them felt something new. A sense that the galaxy had changed. That the Deathworlders from Earth were no longer just a threat in the darkness. They were a light that could be called upon when the darkness grew too deep. On the ironclad, Shaw looked back at the shrinking planet of Thesari Prime. What are you thinking? Lawson asked. I am thinking about the future, Shaw said. I am thinking about all the other species out there who might need help someday. I am thinking about what it means to be human in a galaxy full of life. And what does it mean? Shaw turned away from the window. He looked at his crew. These brave men and women who had fought and bled and died for strangers. It means we never stop, he said. We never give up. We never turn our backs on those who need us. The galaxy feared us because of what we could destroy. Now they will know us for what we can protect. The fleet jumped into faster-than-light travel. The stars stretched into lines of light. The Deathworlders went home, but they would return. Whenever there was a call for help. Whenever innocent lives were in danger. Whenever the darkness threatened to swallow the light, the Deathworlders would always answer. That was their promise. That was their gift. That was what it meant to be human.